Michael, que je vais inviter on stage. Et je vous demande de l'applaudir très 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 chaleureusement. Il vient de Londres et il nous fait le plaisir d'être avec nous ce soir.
Thank you, Hugo. I'm afraid I'm going to be speaking in English tonight. I don't, not a massive fan of these microphones, so let me know if it's coming through, or it's too loud, or if I sound like a cat or something, you know. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay, cool. All right, I'm here tonight to talk to you about design, product, how things work together, and you'll see more as I go on. So I'm not going to, without further ado, I'm going to leap ahead. Now, any questions? Absolutely welcome. We will have a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, if you could hold them back, because I might answer your question throughout. We've got a fair bit to cover. Hugo, shout at me or wave at me or something when I'm running out of time. Thank you. Okay, so like I say, please do tweet. These guys are doing such an excellent job in an amazing place. So, go for it. But if you could turn your phones to silent, that would be amazing. Thank you. Okay. Right, so who the hell am I? What am I doing here? I'm lead UX at Unruly Co. in London. We're a video technology company. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I'm a team of one, so I'm the head of user experience. I'm also the bottom junior guy. I do the most menial tasks. But I love user experience, so I do a bunch of, I love it all. So that's interaction design, UI engineering, a UI engineer, user experience research, micro copy, training, mentoring people. I've been doing that since before it was called user experience, when it was it had all sorts of odd names and it was very disparate. I think we've come a long way. But I've done work for all sorts of really big companies, e-commerce, very small startups, and I'm starting to see some very common things occurring. Okay. Who's Unruly Co? Well, we started about 7 years ago with 4 people. It's been great fun. We can't really call ourselves a startup anymore. We've got 200 people all the way around the world, 14 offices, and it's been great. It's been an amazing ride. We own the Vara video chart. We do the whole kind of video life cycle. So we go from helping people to make really interesting videos to promote themselves. We help them, find them directors. We'll also analyze their content for virality, for want of a better term. We'll look at it for its emotional impact and help advertisers and marketers really build on their relationships with customers. Because it's not about just kind of doing 50s adverts anymore. Hello, buy me. It's about finding the right audience for your product. And we do that with video. But we're also social media. So, so we make that stuff shareable, and it goes on to, we go all the way around to kind of SaaS products, which is software as a service. Which that product scans the internet on a daily basis and comes back with what the most highly performing stuff is and helps you compare it to people who are doing the same thing as you. Okay. The thing about Unruly is it's the clue's in the name. It is a bit unruly. We like to take a slightly unusual approach to things. We think that's the best way to go about things. Completely, disrupt, ignore what's come before, do it our way, and do it. And if it's a little bit silly as well, then that's great. And I have to warn you now, this presentation may contain memes, 8-bit gaming characters, and kittens. Yes, it'll definitely have kittens. So, when Hugo came to me about a few months back, ever since then I've been curious about what kind of audience he has at GTSO. So, who have we got here tonight? So, are we all from Paris? Everyone from Paris here tonight? Great. If you raise your hand if you're not from Paris. Okay. Where are you guys from? You from Europe? Yeah. Anyone from America? No. Oh, there's a couple here. Look there. Awesome. Anywhere else? Have I missed out anyone? No. Oh, thank God. Okay, so what sort of people do we have here? Are we on the product side, you say, or are you any designers here? There's quite a few, yeah, half maybe. Any developers, programmers, that kind of side of things? Word, excellent. There's a good few there. Any product people or commercial people, sales, startup. I know it's hard to say. When if you work in product and startup, you kind of do a bit of everything. So okay, I'll leave it at that. All right. Okay. Well, I think tonight I want to talk to you about the problem with product design as it stands. Perhaps a solution. And I'd like to talk to you about that. I want your feedback. We'll have a little discussion at the end about what you think of what your problems have been, whether they fit into this, or whether I'm talking absolute baloney. And before we do that, I wanted to share some techniques that you might be able to find useful as well if you're having the same kind of problems. Okie doke. Well, I have to say, I think product design and development is a bit broken. It's not doing too. In all sorts of areas. You have people trying to design websites like they're bits of paper. And I think it comes back, or people trying to think about products in terms of tangible product sales and development. And it comes back to this, I think, it really does. It's back to, we're not building canvases, the big billboards, we're not building cars, but people can, we can just release to people. We're not necessarily building furniture or shoes, or fashion. But people are trying to use those techniques over and over again, just falling back to that kind of that approach to build things that are implicitly different, really fundamentally different. It fails with modern software because they're not immediately updatable. You don't kind of come down in the morning to your garage to get in your car and you realise it's got 5 wheels now. Someone's come there in the night and added one. It's software applications that have a client-server model like SaaS, regularly updated models like apps or iOS software. It's kind of really failing that. There's an approach that is really quite different. So, and because of that, I think it's quite rare that we find products that are have that really strong, robust, usable, beautiful, and rigorous design in long-lived software products. And certainly, it's rare. I'm sure you can think of counterexamples, but it's not the norm. I really don't think. And that's because it's hard, I think. Yeah. Okay. So, excuse me. Classically, some really obvious examples. I think you've all come across these before. If you've done more than 1 or 2 projects, people sometimes design first. They'll gain clients sign-off in an agency, perhaps. They'll pass a PSD spec to the client, and they'll go, "Yes, I want that. I'll have that." And then they leave, and then pass. Once they've sold that, they'll give it to a developer, and he'll go, "Oh my God, I can't make that." Or the other way around. In tech-centric startups, you'll often find designers considered a skin. What's that about? It's crazy. It's integral to the product. You can't. It's really hard to unstitch all those pieces. So coming out after a product's been finished, it is a nightmare. I think some of us have done that before. I'm sure. Okay, so I think there's signs of a solution. It depends on what background you've had, where you've come from, but you may know where kind of gist of what I'm talking about. But we'll see. Okay, so I think looking back into product industrial design of complex products like automotive design again, exterior design designers, exterior body designers, work closely with the handling guys, the fluid. The dynamics, NVH, I had to look that one up, I always forget. It's noise, vibration, and handling. So you can drive the car and actually have a conversation with the person next to you. But they particularly in kind of perhaps more short-run sports cars, you see these beautiful artisans working with real technical problems. Okay, but we've got to start. It goes both ways, that's the thing. Design can't just be an afterthought of engineering teams, but equally it can't work in a vacuum. You can't leave engineers unable to fill the design afterwards, like, create this beautiful world for the client. Yes, I want that, the client says. But essentially it's impossible with our technology today. I think it needs a revolution of sorts. And I think they like revolutions here. They've got neon on the wall there, so they must do. It needs a slightly more holistic approach. It's not going to be about being better at designer, I don't think. I don't think it's being, doing more better design or being better at writing code, although that's always a good thing as well. Let me take a small tangent and talk about something that the perhaps developers will know about already, something called continuous delivery and continuous integration. Okay, this has been a thing for quite a while. A chap called Martin Fowler started talking about it a while back. It's been something to do with various ways of developing products for a while. But essentially, it works like this. The developers make some stuff. It gets, they upload it to their, their kind of servers. It gets kind of melded in automatically. The stakeholders can see reporting on, and this is just about reporting to them whether it's working or not. Is it up? Can you go to it and log in? Yes. And then it gets rolled out. And this can happen 3 or 4 times a day. Imagine trying to redesign a product 3 or 4 times a day. The mind boggles. And I'm using design in quite a loose sense, the widest possible sense of user experience, UI design, the works. Excuse me. But I think there's a sort of a really interesting aspect to this, because this is the nature of the medium we're working in. If you're working digital, it gets released regularly, all the time. Some people save up, stuff, but more and more, it's getting deployed regularly, and on a, you can, for instance, you can design a product, say, for iOS 6, and then, by the time they built it, iOS 7 comes out, and it looks awful, or the hardware changes, it doesn't support it, so you have to roll out a new version. That's great, but it's also, it sort of knocks the old models of design apart, of this kind of deliver a thing, walk away. So I want to put a solution to you guys, and I do want some feedback. I'm not sure it's perfect, but I'm calling it continuous creative integration, if you can see that. And I think this might be, it's certainly gets really interesting results at Unreally with the way we do things. So I can leave that with you for a moment, and to think about, and then talk about exactly what am I talking about here? Okay. There may be some theory here, but in practice, that's the real reason. So that's why I want your feedback, really. I'm going to give some really practical examples later, which may or may not work for you, but that's what I want to discuss, really. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's really important that we are co-located in time and space. I'm not saying that in a kind of a Star Trek-y way. I mean in the sense of the designer does not finish a job and leave, and then the developers take over and do a thing. You're all in the same place at the same time, talking to each other, throwing things at each other if necessary, and I mean ideas or whatever. Even some things like this, cross-disciplinary pairing. Now, there's a really interesting chat on LinkedIn last month, I think, about design pairing, which is 2 designers working together on the same thing. Now, we kind of do that, but this is a much closer approach. It's much more tied in. So you're literally talking about and moving bits of pixels about yourselves. And often you'll have, if there's 2 people, you'll be sitting at a desk and say, one guy will be the driver, with the hands on. Another guy will be the he'll sort of sit back and take the long view and go, what about this? And the thoughtful view. And you can switch roles. But that's essentially what pairing is in something called XP, extreme programming. And it's been something that's been around for quite a while now, maybe 15 years. But we've been trying it in all sorts of ways with these symbols, if they're really not obvious. So traditionally you have developer pairing. I've been trying sort of pairing with developers. That's me in the sunglasses. I've also paired with the product owners or in product sponsors as well, which is unusual. And I'd like to extend that to clients if you work in an agency environment. So the people who are paying your salary, essentially, the guys who are going to make the decisions at the end. It might be out there. Talk to me about it afterwards, or let's discuss it if you think it's absolutely impossible. You would never do that, but let me know. And also the product people. Absolutely not forgetting them, and certainly not last, just in this list. So sometimes we'll triple, which will be, it's 3 people sitting around a desk, big screens, 1 computer, 1 keyboard, discussing literally working the problem and deploying it. Okay, so that's one aspect. You'll begin to see, I think, some of the stuff I'm talking about here is familiar to, might be familiar to people who are interested in kind of lean, agile or startup areas, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But certainly, I'm talking about our particular way of doing it, so it might not be quite the same. Okay, so first of all, I think what we do when we start something in Unruly is we understand the audience. Just identify some really core principles, basic stuff. What's it about? What are we trying to solve? What are the problems? What isn't it? What should you say? Well, it's not going to be this. It's not going to be this. And a list of potential features as a result. You can't help doing that because it just happens as you start to think of, you come up with ideas. You're in the pub. You're thinking, oh, I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. It's great. That's half the fun. But that's all you need to start with. But contrary to other approaches, I'm going to completely go off the off-piste here compared to some of the kind of agile, lean, and lean startup approaches. But first of all, there's another kind of high-level thing I think you need, and you might call this a product design coach or a UX coach, but UX coach seems to fit. So it's not a head of UX. I'm talking about a guy or girl who's going to mentor, train, coach, help the guys to help themselves, because you can't be there all the time. Okay, I understand this might be influenced by the fact there's only one of me, so I'm kind of using these guys or helping. It's a good approach for me, but I think this is really important because immersing your team in user knowledge is part of this this very, very kind of fluid approach. Okay, I can hear some of you saying, all right, that's a bit weird. I'm training people to do my job. That's effectively what we're talking about when I say coaching. It's not really that. It's more about they'll never be able to do your job if you're a UX person and you feel worried about this. So you've got to let go. Yeah, hence the quote there. Sorry. Yeah. So you can't be a lone ranger in these kind of situations. Quite historically, I think UX used to kind of go off and do this kind of great research piece. You'd go out and kind of spear some user information and bring it back, cook it, and prepare it for your team, and then present it in some fashion in a highlights reel or something like that. But I'm not talking about that. I don't think that's a very healthy approach. It's very high on the time taken. It's time intensive. It's documentation intensive. But what I do recommend is help deputize team members. Help yourself by just getting people to come and become part of your team. So effectively, the whole company starts to become your UX team. Okay, so in Agile, and this is a fairly common, or has been the last few years, a fairly common kind of principle of Agile UX is marinating the team in this kind of user knowledge. But I'm going to take it further. Yes, do persona workshops. I think people like Jeff Gothelf or in Lean UX, people like, who am I thinking of? Eric Ries. So they talk about these kind of pragmatic personas, very lightweight ones. And I've got to say, I think they're insubstantial, ghost-like, and they don't make very good end results, when you're talking about really complex products, I'm on record now. I'm going to start it. I'm going to get it flamed. But if you build, a friend of mine said to me once, if you build and design products for imaginary people that aren't based on anything that you've just thought up, you might make a lot of imaginary money, but that's not really what we're after. We're after the real thing. Okay, so yes, do proper workshops, but include everyone. So this guy here on the right is a CEO of a company. That's a product guy as well with a shiny head. There's a product guy over here. And these are techies down the right-hand side. But it's getting all the people together who need to know this information and really marinating them in it. And if you haven't worked in a development environment before, or embedded with them, or vice versa, work very closely, then this is one way of kind of getting their kind of personas across, is to put great posters up. This isn't rocket science. This isn't kind of groundbreaking either. These are kind of traditional approaches to making personas, but I would take that a little further as well. Okay, really quick side point. Has anyone actually heard of this thing, Agile, before? Yeah. How many people? Has everyone heard of it? Every single person is an expert in Agile. Okay. Have you ever done it before? How many people have actually tried Agile before? I know you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe half, I think, half of us. If you're entirely honest. Does anyone here actually like it? Oh, there's one. Excellent. Cool. Good. No one's, but it's difficult for I think on the design side, and it's really hard with user experience and Agile. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we're just doing it wrong. Okay, so let's kind of look at a little more detail. So traditionally, you might put your personas up on the wall like this. Well, I'd go further. So you've got your list of tasks, of features or whatever. In Agile, these might be user stories. Actually replace them, the name with, instead of as a user, I want to do this, or this product should do this, it's revolve the whole story around that person. So as Charlotte, as Jack, whatever your personas are called, and make it about them. So you really should put pictures on your personas if you're making them, actual pictures of people. And if you do that, print them out. A company called moo.com, lovely guys. They'll print out tiny little things, and these are the kind of things that Agile people use to represent a kind of story or a piece of work. And if you stick one of these stickers on there, they're indelibly linked to the story. You can't kind of pick up that card and go, oh, I'm going to do this now, without saying, oh, it's for that person. So again, it's just little things. It might sound very, very small and subtle, but it's certainly this that has worked for us. Okay. So another aspect to this is a certain. I think someone was talking about this a little bit last year, but traditionally, where we have a discovery, design, and then a build phase. Well, I would meld those all together. It sounds chaotic, but actually, it's working to a certain extent. So when we start together. So, for instance, bring the technical side. If you're a designer, bring the technical side to you. Get everyone drawing. I've heard this 1,000 times, and quite often they'll say, "Oh, I can't draw or design. Design is fluffy. It's nothing to do with me. Designers don't know shit. I'm not a designer." But later on, when you deliver those designs, you'll find people saying, perhaps, "That's not the best design." People who aren't designers. We've all heard it. I don't think that's the case. I think when I hear that, I say, well, can you draw these things here? Sorry, PlayStation. If you can draw those, you can start drafting. We're not talking about designing. We're talking about drafting ideas here. So if you can draw these things, then you can start to talk and dialogue and communicate about interaction design much, much better. And that's what we're talking about here. It's this dialogue between teams where perhaps it might not have happened before. Okay, so time's running away from me, so I'm going to flip through these a bit. But if you look into something called Design Studio or Design Charrettes, fantastic techniques for creating ideas together as a team. Just you, developers, the product people, get the clients in there as well. Genuinely, this is what I'm talking about here. So you start off often with a first phase where you don't do any drawing. You just write down the features you think the product needs, and it could be really, really small details like, I think the buttons need to look like cars or something. Something really, it's a silly example, but you see what I'm saying. And then you move on to perhaps another stage after reviewing it as a team and get people as teams to sketch, cross-disciplinary teams, groups of people, to actually come up with ideas. So these are all done by developers, and I'm horribly kind of pigeonholing them as they can't draw. But no, the ones that I know are kind of wary of doing any of this kind of thing. It is not traditionally seen as their territory. But I think when you get people together like this, you can come up with some amazing results. Now, I think any designer could look at these and go, if these are good, solid designs that could work technically, you're miles ahead already with compared to this kind of approach where you go design, then develop. So these are actual kind of final sketches that the UI designer then took away, UX designer went on and worked on. They became the basis of some development work that was happening simultaneously. Okay, so we're making interactive products, right? So why are we still using Photoshop files? Why are we using static files? Sorry, Adobe people. I love Photoshop, I really do, but I don't see how you can communicate, even whatever product you're using, the complexities of interaction that happen with static images. Now, so this is what I mean when I say perhaps start to leave the design phase out. Use sketches, slowly up the resolution. Something that we were trying out. I mean, there's loads of tools at the moment. I mean, in the last 2 or 3 years, there's tools like Pop for mobile prototyping. People even do it in Keynote. Excuse me. What else have we got? InVision. What's one over there? Balsamic. Yeah. So this is an HTML prototype we did, and it was just to get an idea of how it worked. These are scans of sketches we did. This one was by the CEO. This is by the product manager. These are really, really rapid ones that I just kind of scrolled out. I'm not ashamed to admit it. They might not be the best designs in the world, but it was in conversation. And in fact, that's a picture of a whiteboard. And we put these actual images into an HTML page. And we put them there so we could see the flow of pages, see how they work together. And then we upped the resolution. We started using Balsamic for kind of regularity. So it still looks a little bit sketchy. So it doesn't feel like it's finished, but it's got that, all the buttons look the same, even though they're sketchy. And those were things, we actually screen grabbed that and put it into the product itself. So you can see where this is going. As you up resolution in these on the screens, slowly improve them. Prototypes become a kind of a thing to test against, but also to put in front of clients. Again, something I'm really fascinated to know from the agency guys, whether you would ever do this. There's kind of, you would show this. But this is something to discuss, I think. Okay. There's a kind of a final couple of things I think are really important around testing and principles and guidelines. Okay, so branding guidelines. We've all seen them. I think I worked for a company once, TV company, that branding guidelines were about that deep in A4 pages because it was a TV company. They had lots and lots of TV shows, brands, TV channels. We're familiar with them, I think, on the whole. BBC did something really interesting with that, and they made them into something called the Global Interaction Experience Language. Sorry, but it still seemed to me really great, but not quite bringing everyone together into the picture. It's still kind of design-centric, it felt like, which was exacerbating this problem, this divide between design and dev. So what we did was start putting the code from our guidelines, which we made. In fact, we took Bootstrap, if you're familiar with it, and actually stitched that code into the products, but also made some guideline, like a guidelines website with it. And that became the kind of reference point for everyone. So designers could go and see if it was working. If the developers needed a drop down, they could visit that page and say, it's that one, and that's the way the code should work. They'll pick it out and put it into the right location. And clients could see that their brand was being looked after. And I don't know if anyone's done this before. I found it really, really interesting. It's hard. It was very hard persuading developers to put and designers are going to commit to this idea of this evolving document. And it's not finished yet. I think on one of the products we've got at the moment, parts of it are not the prettiest. I felt slightly uncomfortable looking at them, but it's really interesting. So we've got the guidelines. They're in the code, the actual product code base. And to do that, we had to, again, pair with these guys, pair with the engineers. We've got designers sitting down with developers saying, no, can you move it left a bit? No, it's that kind of, maybe one more pixel on the border radius on that button, that kind of thing. And yeah, we're using, this is GitHub. And you can see there, this is literally part of the, it's a sort of a tool they can use to start creating a product, but all the products we have now have this code stitched into them. So we make a change to this, all the products sort of roll out. That's another thing. Okay. Rapidly running out of time, so I'm going to race through these a little bit. I think in user experience, it's quite common to either remote in clients to watch usability testing, and also developers. So people can just log in, or they come to a kind of one-way mirror room, and they can look in and go, and they can see the users being doing some kind of activity, running the script, being moderated by the user experience researcher. Well, I'm talking about taking that further. I'm saying get the developers in and work with them to write the tests. To really, you're not talking about training them up. It's more about just really, really immersing them in the experience of the way you've created the tests, the way you've recruited the users, and what that information means. So yeah, again, it's like UX coaching. So here are some other things. At one point, I felt I had enough in a product to start making decisions about the design, but some of the developers felt they wanted to find out some more stuff. Great. So we wrote some scripts, and they went and visited clients, customers, and started asking them, filling out this information. But the important point is, I'm not giving them a script to kind of, you've got to do it this way. It was more about a prompt, and it was more about sharing that information amongst, as a team, all of us together. Okay, and a few other techniques was having a little board where people could just, if they've got a question, I wonder how our users do that. Write it up, slap it on the board there. Again, if the other way around, if users happen to write in feedback, comments, we put it on our board for everyone to see, to radiate it out there. If you're familiar with agile terminology, information radiator, right there. Okay, and equally, there are some really, really interesting tools you can use now, like Try My UI, usetesting.com. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just saying, if once you've written these scripts, people can, anyone can go and run these scripts on, so to speak, duplicate the test and set it running and gather that information. Same with microsurveys and from OLAC and Qualaroo, which kind of, you've seen them all, probably seen them on applications, they pop up from the bottom of the page. And this sort of stuff just kind of gathers that information, lots of different sources of information, helps us, if you get the whole team involved, they're starting to really, really understand for the spirit of what you're trying to do, not just the kind of the yes/no answers to things when they ask you. So, right, that's really interesting. But I'm saying do this every day or every week. Make not just in iterations, which is the big sort of agile thing. Let's do it. Let's kind of run for that sprint. No, forget sprints. Do this. Put it in the calendar. Just do these things every single week or every single. Perhaps every single day, to put it in your diaries, literally. So that's to summarize, I guess. That's co-locating, close collaboration with pairing. The idea of having a UX coach, and then these kind of methods of communication, drafting together, prototyping the product together, building the brand guidelines together. You're seeing the commonality of the word here. It's together. And that's the really important thing. It's about the people and the communication. Okay. So, you'll be pleased to hear that's my thesis, if you like. What do you think? Any questions? Big silence. Did anyone actually understand what I was saying? I know we're not all perhaps natural English speakers here. No questions at all? Was it that clear? Well done. I must have done that really, really clearly. Okay, so, all right, so if you have any questions, please do catch up with me on at Headshot on Twitter. Catch up with me afterwards. And thank you very much for listening. Cheers.